You know what game did really well, and the numbers show it? The Last of Us. I think that the fans fell in love with the characters and the storyline and the whole thing as a whole. I think Neil did a great job. I'm gonna call Neil. I love Neil. Neil's he's such a guy. I'm gonna call him right now. All right, come on, Neil. Good old Neil.
Hello?
Hey, Neil, how you doing? CEO Big Chungus here.
Oh, Big Chungus, didn't expect to hear from you today.
How are you?
I'm doing great, Chungo. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, Neil.
What can I do for you?
Well, we looked at the numbers. People love The Last of Us. We want a second one, and we want it now.
Well, of course they love The Last of Us. It was so well written by me.
Yes, Neil, you're fantastic.
So yeah, that's great news that you wanted a second one. I actually kind of anticipated that. So over here at Naughty Dog, we have actually been brainstorming over some ideas. And trust me when I say we have some things that are gonna make the audience love Ellie and Joel even more. And I'm not done yet. I'm gonna add a character and they're gonna love them. They're gonna love them, Chungo.
That's what I like to hear, Neil.
They're not gonna have a choice. They're gonna love her.
Okay, Neil, who is she?
Hold on, I'm gonna fax you over a picture of her right now.
Okay.
Let me know when you get it.
Okay, I got it here.
Her name is Abby. What do you think?
I love her. I think we all love her here. We love her, Neil. Start today, if you can.
You got it, Chungo. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, big guy.
All right. What is up, guys? It is Paul and Drake from Why We Game, the channel where we play games, review games, and tastefully disagree. Today, we're going to be going over The Last of Us 2. We played the game. Most of you guys were there with us on stream. I want to go over how we're going to be reviewing this today because there will be spoilers in our review, but not in the beginning, right? So the way that we like to do things on Why We Game, is we want to go over on a 1 through 10 scale, right? Graphics, core mechanics, the gameplay loop, immersion, and then in this case with a story game, the last thing we will go over is the story. So if you want a non-spoiler review, feel free to stick with us and we will make sure to give you loud visual and audio cues when the spoilers are ready to flood your screen, okay? If you're ready for the spoilers and you only care about the story, we'll make sure that we leave a timestamp down in the description for you guys. You can just skip to that part. That said, let's jump right into it. Like I said, we played The Last of Us 2 the day that it dropped. And we were ready, man. We played the first one not too long ago. I watched Drake play it for the first time, and we were prepared. We were immersed in the lore. We were ready to go. So both of us are well up and well conversed on everything there is to know about Ellie and Joel. And going into this adventure, we were ready for whatever Neil Druckmann and Naughty Dog had for us. So, good old Neil Druckmann.
Good old Neil. What a guy.
Okay, so remember, these are on a scale of 1 to 10, and they don't have to be a flat number. We can also throw in the decimals if we choose to. Okay, the first thing that we're going to go into, and I'm going to let Drake jump into first, is graphics. On a scale from 1 to 10, right? Start with how you would break down the graphics, and then give us your score.
So I think as far as the graphics go, I think it was a beautiful game. Now, we have to keep in mind, it's 2020. Games ought to be beautiful at this point. Now, I think that visually, the God rays are beautiful, and just the landscape itself, we have the trees, it's Northwest America. It's a beautiful place. But I think, given that it is 2020, and it is the end of a generation, and we can see the limits, and we're kind of there as far as what this console can do, I give it an 8. I think 8 is a standard score. Mm-hmm. Beautiful game. I'm not mesmerized. I'm not, taken aback, but it's a beautiful game. It's an 8, a solid 8.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, no, I respect the score, but like you said, I do want to say that, hey, it is the end of the PS4 generation, right? And we have to say that this game is pushing the PS4 to its absolute graphical limits. There were beautiful landscapes. The overgrowth of Seattle, I thought, was wonderfully put together and looked beautiful. At no times was there anything that I looked at that I was like, oh my gosh, that's too, cubical or geometrical, whatever the case is. That is exactly the way it is supposed to look. Unless, of course, I was looking at like a dead body or something and then I was thrown off. But that's what was supposed to be in the game. So graphically, considering everything, I would give this an 8.5. So I'm just going to go a half tick above Drake just for the respect of it being over, the end of the PS4 cycle and things like that.
Overall, it's fine. It's good. It's good water.
I mean, look at the God rays. Look at the God rays.
That's
No,
not
those
even
are good God rays.
a graphic. It's it's good. I like the look of God Rays. Since Skyrim, it's been good, but nothing new.
That's an insult. That's a passive-aggressive insult.
Passive-aggressive?
Like that. So that was our graphics. 8.5 for me, 8 for Drake. We're going to average somewhere around 8.25 for that. Next one are the core mechanics. Now, remember, the core mechanics are all the buttons that you're pressing consistently through gameplay, right? Whether that's to pick up an object, whether that's in the middle of assaulting a combatant, whether that's the quick time events that were in it, all that stuff. So what would you say on the core mechanics?
As far as the core mechanics go, I think they were done. I don't think you can do more core mechanics well. I think you can do them efficiently. I think they were done efficiently. Gameplay, it's just like the first one. We've tweaked it. We've improved it. It is a sequel to a game. And that's what you're after. You don't want an entirely revamped system for everything. It's a sequel. You want sort of a similar thing with some additions. I think Sneak was improved a little bit. I think they did a little bit better on Sneak sort of things. And I think that keeping sort of the similar, HUD for getting equipment and sort of things, I think it was done well.
Okay. I think as far as the mechanics and the gameplay loop, if you played the first one, you're going to be really, really familiar. You probably don't even have to go to the tutorial. It's really all the same. As far as like pressing triangle to pick up all your loot and things like that, I told Drake off camera, and while we were playing the game, you guys called me, what was it, a loot merchant on stream. And that was because literally every opportunity I had, I was exploring as much as I could possibly explore. And that was to get all the loot to make sure that I was fully equipped and I could craft the things I needed to craft for any sort of battle or event that was happening, or I was getting ready for it to happen, right? Whether that was humans or zombies or whatever the case. One of the parts of the gameplay and the core mechanics that I really, really did not enjoy, that I don't think they polished up whatsoever, was actually the gunfighting, right? So the aiming and shooting and the unnatural sway, granted, you can upgrade these things, but it wasn't satisfying. It was not something that I would revisit the game to enjoy again, if that makes any sense. I did not play the game for the gunfighting. I played the game for the immersion aspect of it and the ability to go around and loot and then prepare for battles and things like that. And again, if you've played the first one, then you understand the stealth mechanics. You understand that they added a few things like going prone and jumping, which we're highly celebrated, which is a weird thing to celebrate in 2020, considering we've been going prone and jumping in games for, I'm 30 years old. We've been doing it forever. But they were welcomed additions. So I guess I'll give them a pat on the back for that. The tall grass, being able to prone in that was a nice touch in stealth. As far as everything else goes, I would give this an 8, right? It's not something that was just so wonderful that I have to tell you guys, hey, you need to play this just for the gameplay. The gameplay loop and the mechanics are just top notch. But were they something that broke the game or killed immersion or anything like that? No, right? So I think they were a tick above average, and average usually for me is around 7. So I'm going to give these guys an 8. Yeah. So next thing, we've got immersion. And I know you went in when we talked off camera about this. Immersion.
Yes, this is where we might have some contention regarding score and perspective. So I think immersion, obviously my standard is an 8. I think immersion is, if I were to define it, how well you are entranced in the game, how the game pulls you in and makes you stay there. Now, everything is beautiful. The scenery is beautiful. The gameplay is beautiful. Story is there.
It exists. We'll get to the story.
We'll get to it. But the biggest problem I have with the game as far as immersion, and this is indicative of a lot of different games that are of this sort, of this linearity, is puzzles that aren't puzzles that make you stuck. What I mean by that is there are no puzzles necessarily per se in this game. But there are parts where you will find that you're stuck because you can't find a rope, or you can't find where you're supposed to go necessarily, or you missed the dumpster, and so you end up going back for 5 minutes, and you going forward another 2 minutes, and eventually it gives you the hint, this is what you're supposed to do, look at it, but it wastes time. I think it's very distracting. If the rope is this color and the concrete is the very similar color, I missed the rope, I didn't quite catch it, I'm stuck here for 5 minutes, and it reminds me I'm playing a game, I'm on a level, and I'm stuck. Right.
and this, he said there was going to be a little bit of counteraction here between my thoughts and his. I remember the days, because like I said, I'm an older gamer now at this point. I remember the days when I would get stuck on a linear game or a level or whatever the case it was on an old school game, and I would just turn it off. I would get really, really frustrated. I would spend hours on it, and I would just turn it off. And then I would have to think of, during my off time or like the times that I wasn't able to play the game, I would have to sit there and think about, man, I really want to play the game. I really like the core bit of the game, but I can't get past this one part, right? And so the part where Drake and I are different, we have different opinions, is because I remember those days, and in those days you had to figure it out for yourself if you wanted to fit. In this, given that it is a linear, narrative-driven experience, I think they did a very good job of making sure that if people got stuck for too long, and too long is typically for according to Naughty Dog, is like 5 or 6 minutes, they were going to give you a button cue so that they would give you a tasteful hint at where you had to go to complete your objective, whether that was like getting over a bridge or a wall or whatever the case is to continue your journey. This was done in ways where you would simply press down on left analog, didn't matter if it was PS4 or Xbox or whatever the case. You'd press down on the left analog, and if you had a sidekick, the sidekick would go, hey, how about over here, right? And they would be standing next to the place that you had to go. If you didn't have a sidekick, you press down, and it would simply just adjust your vision, right? Here's kind of where you need to be. As far as immersion, that's something that could definitely break immersion, but I'm appreciating the fact they didn't allow it to break immersion fully by making me so frustrated I had to put down the game. One of the things that I want to talk about as far as immersion goes, and I think it was one of the more important things, is audio, though. When we played this game on stream, we didn't have an opportunity to play with headphones, crank up the volume, surround sound, get like fully immersed into it. But I went back and I actually played the game some more off stream, and I played it on like survivalist mode or whatever the hardest mode was. One of the things that I really, really enjoyed is I threw my headset on. And I want to say the reason why we couldn't throw the headset on was because of some difficulties in the setup or whatever the case is while we're streaming. But when I'm off stream, I can do things like this. So I threw the headset on, and dude, there were times when we go through, there was a basement in a hospital, right? I won't tell you too much about it because we're not at the spoilers part. A basement in a hospital, and it was dark and it was drippy, right? Because it has that Seattle floody feel to it because it's, apocalypse or whatever. It's drippy. I'm hearing part of the building creak. I can hear zombies off in the distance. And there's a right bumper mechanic where you can lean down and you can kind of like hear all the things that exist around you. There's whether it's humans or zombies, you can hear them and you can actually spot them. There were times when the surround sound was so good, right? There would be a zombie off to my right, and I knew because I was hearing it so well in my headphones, I didn't even have to press that right bumper to use that mechanic because I knew damn well that's where the zombie was. I heard him.
That's pretty exciting.
It was really good, and the music was always on point. It always delivered the appropriate ambiance. I thought the audio was fantastic, and I can't go hard enough for how well they did the audio. Like, that's one thing that makes or breaks games, and a lot of times it's overlooked. Here at Why We Game, we definitely will not overlook that. I need to figure out who these people are that did like the musical scores and things like that, because props to them. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on as far as immersion goes?
To give it a score, 5.5. And only because I think that in a 5.5 for immersion. And here's why. Here, 8.
That's criminal.
8 is my standard, right? And I think in a progression-based game, moving forward, if there's ever a point where you stop moving forward, I know I'm playing a game. I have to stop and go, okay, where was it? What did I miss?
There are going to be people that agree with you.
And
there are going to be people that agree with me. The educated one.
Oh, okay. What?
Okay, there's one bit that I want to mention before I give you guys my final verdict on immersion, and that's something that I mentioned to you off camera, and it was the fact that in 2020, the video gaming industry tends to want to release unfinished games. Now, whether those are single linear story games or multiplayer games, we see hot fixes in the forms of day one patches and like post-release patches to make sure the game isn't working. Yes, we're looking at you, Bethesda. You stink at that, right? It's not cute anymore. We want it done. This game right here is immersive for the things that it does not have in the game. And the things that it doesn't have in the game are times where I fall through the earth or times where my character gets stuck. there was literally no I ran into no bugs, right? It's been the most polished release of 2020, and one of the most polished releases that I can remember actually in a long time. Granted, they took 7 or 8 years to make the game, and it should be that way, and this is what the standard should be. I want to make sure we're hammering that home because we both feel that way. Non-buggy releases should be the standard, but because they are not, according to the video game industry, I want to make sure we're patting Naughty Dog on the back for doing the correct thing and making sure. Yeah, I'm not Naughty Dog, even though I played. Oh, that feels pretty solid. Even though I played Neil Druckmann in the skit that you guys already saw, I have no affiliation with them, unfortunately. Final verdict.
You're not as good as Neil.
We'll talk about story soon. My final verdict on immersion. I'm giving this a 9. I'm giving this a 9.
I'm gonna be sick. Are you kidding?
No.
Are you kidding? You said
9 versus a 5.5. Like, golly.
5.
Jesus. Well, that's why we have both of us on here, so we can give 2 very different perspectives to make sure that we are giving you guys the most unbiased perspective as possible as a whole channel.
Checks and balances.
Checks and balances for sure. And that's why we do things like this. So, this is the part where there are spoilers. Massive spoiler alert. If you don't want the game spoiled for you and you've watched up to this point to decide if it's a fun game that you should buy, my suggestion would be a non-spoiler review that doesn't have anything with stories. I'm probably giving this game,
Make a fucking sound. Hands up.
as far as gameplay goes, I'm going to give the game an 8. Non-spoiler review. It's okay to disagree with me. We just talked about this. Non-spoiler.
Give me disagreeing with you.
Give me a final verdict.
Okay. Gameplay in mind.
Oh man.
Not story in mind.
Not story in mind.
Do not crucify 7.
Okay.
7. Because it's a fun game. Gameplay wise, I enjoy zombies. I like throwing bricks.
We pick up
I
your little
love
play
bricks.
things.
I love bricks.
And in bottles.
In bottles.
Yes.
We have bored pregnant people back at the.
So those are our final
back at the
verdicts,
theater that can do
and I want
something
you
to do
guys
with
to
their
know
time, you know?
why we game.
Have a
We
little
usually are
PlayStation
rocking about a
Portable,
6.5 to a
whatever
7
that-
for
whatever
a
that is.
very
Like,
average
feels like a good
game,
idea,
maybe
you
a
know? No,
6
we're getting loaded
for a
up
super
with
average
ammo
game, right?
right
So
now.
for us to be
Am I to
anywhere between
expect-
7 and 8 as far as the gameplay is related, if you're
Am I
looking
to
for something to
expect
pick up,
serious here?
maybe wait for it to go on sale, or maybe if you just want the gameplay experience, I think it's good enough to warrant purchase at this point.
It was something.
Maybe if you go to other review channels and make sure you're doing your due diligence. But that is our non-spoiler final review on just gameplay. I'm giving you guys an audio and a visual spoiler alert. We're about to talk a lot about the story. Okay, you have 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Story. Okay, so we are picking up at the end. We are 5 or 6 years down the road. Ellie is like 19. She's a young adult. She's way into chicks. There's this other girl named Dina. She likes Dina mucho. She likes Dina a lot, right? These people come in. We learn that they're from they're from a group called the Wolves. They're from Seattle, Washington, and they come over and they're led by a lady named Abby. And Abby has, well, let's not jump into it like that because that's not how we hear about it. The story is pieced together, kind of weird. Okay. I want you guys to understand something when I say this. The fact that spoilers.
You said spoilers.
I'm so nervous to say it.
Go.
Joel dies. Joel dies in the first hour of the game. And if you don't know who Joel is, he's basically the character that you play the entire first game with. He is the father figure to Ellie, who is the main character for the most part in this game, right? And he is not just killed, he is brutally murdered in a room full of people watching, with Ellie helplessly watching and begging for his life. He has a golf club taken to his face, and it is not pretty. It's very graphic. And that, for me, as someone who is emotionally invested into the first one, I'm going to play this clip from the stream that we had, and you guys will understand how we feel.
They're all gonna die. Slowly.
Yeah, so it was not pretty, even in the slightest. So the whole that was like the spark. That's the catalyst of the video game's adventure. Ellie goes and we also learn that Joel's brother Tommy goes, both separately, I might add, out to Seattle to look for this group called the Wolves, and they're out for revenge, and that is the gist of the story. Now, how well is this story about revenge executed? So, we need to talk about roughly the first 12 hours or so. We're playing as Ellie. We're playing as everybody's favorite character, unless you like Joel more. Everybody's first or second favorite character, right? And for the most part, it's a pretty good experience. The flashbacks are so good because you sit there and you miss Joel so much. You have these awesome flashbacks with Ellie and Joel, and there's one in particular that stands out to me. I don't remember if you were there for this playthrough on stream, where Joel took Ellie to a museum, and there was an astrology portion. You were there? An astrology portion of the museum, and it was Ellie's birthday. Joel puts her in what is essentially like a spaceship, right? And gives her the audio for like a NASA launch or whatever. And so Naughty Dog did this super tastefully. It goes a little bit further into the details on the relationship between Joel and Ellie. And it's one of the things, before I absolutely murder this story, I want to make sure that we're shining light on some of the positives. And they did still do a very good job on flashing back to things that happened in between the original and this one, to give you a further bonding between Ellie and Joel. That bonding not being is definitely not lost because you are seeking vengeance for Joel.
Oh, hello. Sorry, the dinosaurs are busy right now.
Oh, Ellie.
Oh, wait. One of the dinosaurs is here.
Ah, because he's old.
Joel, it's for you.
Very funny.
I want to make sure that like you don't get to experience any more gameplay with him, but you feel a little more fueled and motivated to finish your quest because you're still remembering sort of these nice times. It's a good way to get into Ellie's mind a little bit and understand kind of what's making her tick in these decisions that she's making for the story. But after about 12 hours in, we get to a point where we've killed a whole bunch of people. So we saw in the beginning that Abby was sort of the ringleader of a whole group of people that were with her when Joel died. Now, Ellie viciously hunts these people down and murders them, cold-blooded. She makes sure she gets all the information out of them that she could possibly get, and she murders them, right? Fast forward a little bit, and Abby ends up finding Ellie and confronts her at gunpoint after finding out that she'd murdered all of her friends. Where this gets, I don't want to say interesting, because actually it's where it falls off. At the roughly the 12 or 13 hour mark, you then go back towards the timeline. You spent 3 days in Seattle with Ellie. You go back towards Seattle day one, right, in the past, but now you're using Abby as the playable character. Now, Abby was a character that you'll see even on the stream, right? I was not excited to use her in the beginning for the small tidbit that we used her, right? You heard me say it.
Yeah,
You were condoning that, by the way.
I thought it was interesting because I think you can go somewhere with that. I think you can. I hate this character. Okay, now make me love the character, or make me feel something about the character that makes it understandable.
And that's fair. You know what? The idea of delivering two separate perspectives, not only separate but combative perspectives on the same topic, is interesting. It's not groundbreaking, Neil Druckmann. It's been done before, but it is interesting, right? But you give me a character that murders my favorite character from the first one. I'm a father, right? I connected with Joel on a very emotional level. He's a father figure to Ellie. So that's something that I saw. Like, I saw a lot of myself in Joel, right? And so you make me play as this character that I absolutely despise for this action. She's like, I explained it to you like this. If there's a dynamic scale, right? Dynamic meaning ever, always shifting, right? Always being able to be moved. If there's a scale on how much I like a character, Abby started off on a 1 out of 10, right? The lowest that you could possibly get, okay? And we are forced down this path with Abby that is trying to get us to understand and get her through sort of this redemption, right? Neil is trying to paint this picture of redemption for Abby, right? Understanding why she did the things that she did, killing Joel, right? That she felt like it was warranted and all this other stuff. And I get it. But I'm going to tell you what, out of playing fetch with her dog as many times and watching all the flashbacks that she had with this dude named Owen she had a relationship with, right? Who she inevitably bangs again after dude is in a relationship with her friend who he got pregnant, right? Another decision made in poor taste.
What are you going to do?
Not do that, right?
Get the ball.
There was never a time in the game, if we're following that dynamic scale that started at 1, there was never a time in the game that scale ticked up past a 4. And when I found in a very graphic instance that she was having an affair with Owen, who had knocked up one of her friends and was in a committed relationship, I was done. I was like, this person is basically a machine. She's a robot. She's a Terminator. All she does is consider selfish motivations. She doesn't do anything for herself, which is so interesting to me that once that happens, we run into these Scars. And if you don't know what the Scars are a rival faction to the Wolves in Seattle. And they're sort of like this crazy religious cultist group, right? Well, Abby sort of runs into 2 of them, and they're these exiled group. I don't know if exile is the right word because I think they were trying to murder them. I don't think that's how exile works. But they're running from the Scars, these 2, and it's an older sister and a younger brother, who we find out was the whole idea behind them running from them. Lev was the younger brother, who was originally named something like Lily or Libby. I can't remember. Anyway, Lev felt like a boy. Lev wanted to be a boy. Didn't want any sort of arranged marriages like the Scars wanted for them. And so he shaved his head and decided to go by Lev, right? And so that's the motivation behind them running into Abby. Abby helps them, and it just feels like another one of those things, the unnecessary helping of a faction is one of those things that it's like, I'm banging my head against this. Please, in your mind, redeem Abby. She's redeemable from these actions that she's, and it's like, no, none of it works. None of it works. Fast forward back to when Abby's got Ellie at gunpoint. You go through the scene when you have to hunt down Ellie as Abby, and then you put a knife to Dina's throat. She's pregnant, screams Ellie, and Abby looks her dead in the face. She looks her dead in the face, and she goes, good. And then she's about to slice this chick's head off, and the only thing that stops her is Lev. And Lev is like, yo, what are we doing? Right? Obviously, I'm paraphrasing. He's like, yo, what? You can't do that. And I feel like if Lev wasn't there and wasn't the only thing that made Abby feel like she had a chance at redemption. I didn't feel like she did, but apparently Abby felt like she had a chance at redemption because she doesn't follow through on Dina. She takes Lev's advice. And if Lev sees her kill Abby right then and there, it's obvious to Lev, even Lev, who is the redemption project, that she is evil. So I want to fast forward a little bit here to the end of the game, which was immensely unsatisfying. We go on this revenge journey with Ellie and forced to try to redeem Abby. And in the end of the game, we get so close. We get so close to just offing Abby. Ellie chooses not to. And the reason why is because flashbacks of Joel. Because it's not the right thing to do. Flashbacks of Joel. That's why we don't follow through on this journey.
Why do any of it at that point?
You're like rocking back and forth.
Why even start if you think it's wrong to begin with? And you change your mind twice, 3 times?
It's one of those things that it doesn't necessarily make sense for the characters that we have. It doesn't make sense for the motivations that were pounded into our heads in order to try to connect with these characters and buy in to the adventure in the first place, right? It feels like, I don't want to take shots here, but it feels like the game should have never been made. It's not, it culminates into a journey that is not worth taking. And so it basically becomes a waste of time. Now, I'm not saying that playing the game is a waste of time, but the story, the adventure is not something that culminates into anything satisfying for the user. And I'm not going to try to pretend to know or speculate the writers' motivations on this or whatever. Maybe they thought they were, dishing out some real art here. But I'll tell you what, Neil Druckmann, the lead writer for Naughty Dog and the Last of Us series, did a phenomenal job in the first one. But in the second one, it feels like he intentionally put himself behind the 8 ball. And it was one of those things that he felt like if I had to jump into his head, right? I don't want to speculate, but it just feels like it was one of those moves that it's like, I'm such a good writer. I can put myself as a writer behind the 8 ball, using this character to kill off a beloved character and then making the user base play with the murderer, right? And then I'm such a good writer that I can manipulate the user base's feelings enough to where they will feel redemption in Abby's arc. And that never happened for me. 4 tops, like I said on the scale. 4. Never a 7 and 8. Never did we creep up to fully redeemed. We didn't get close. And I felt like it was a failed story. I want to make something very, very clear. At Why We Game, I'm not going to try to talk to you guys about how I feel like the story should have been. There are a whole lot of other ways that would have been satisfying as a fan of the series for the story to go. We made a conscious effort here to review the story as something that, right, is a project from Naughty Dog. Here's the story they were trying to tell, and we're reviewing how well they executed that story. Not being mad because the story is something that I didn't want it to be, which it is. It's not something I wanted. But I'm just saying that I don't feel like it was executed very well. And the timeline, although sometimes seemed okay, for most part, the timeline, you're kind of like tossed and back before both characters, and then you're going back from in the past in Seattle. It just kind of felt unorganized and didn't give us a whole lot of, it wasn't gratifying at all, right? Abby's, for someone like me who never felt like Abby redeemed herself, it was essentially, I know this has been said, so I'm just going to say it again. It's essentially roughly a 10-hour side quest using a main character that I didn't enjoy using. So the final verdicts. I'm going to let Drake go first on the spoiler verdict. Remember that he gave this, what, a 7? You gave this a 7, yeah?
7 on gameplay?
7 on all the other facets, right? What would you give this with the story involved?
I don't think it is a story that is complete. I don't think it's much of a story. I think things happen and characters die and there's no purpose for it. It's a Tuesday morning before class. Why are you giving me this story? Hey, tell me a story. Not about your date Friday night. You tell me about your Wednesday, after you worked out, how good your shower was. It's not a story. It's just something that happened. These things are happening to these characters. These characters are just doing things. They don't seem to be. They were motivated by revenge. We find that's wrong, but we don't replace it with anything, and then we just walk away. I don't think it's a story. 3.5.
Oh, that's brutal.
It's not a story.
We go from 7 to 3.5, which is fair. So if his initial review was a 7, right, and that's without gameplay, but you're talking about a video game that is literally just people love the story of the game, right? Like people are playing to understand what happens to these characters.
That's the point of this sort of game, is the story.
And I can understand why it would impact your score the way that it does. I mean, it essentially slices it in half.
Yeah. So
3.5, which is absolutely brutal. I'm going to give this all together, right? Please remember that I gave it essentially, I'm not essentially, but initially an 8. I'm going to give this a 6.5. 6.5. And remember that we said that 6 to 7 was average, right? I feel like the gameplay is above average, but I do not feel the story is above average. And for a video game that is trying so hard and it is crucial for it to tell a good story, I feel like it falls short of that, and I have to be very critical in the review. 6.5 is as much as I can get it, and this is from somebody that wants to give this a good score. That's the best that I can muster. And my partner here, obviously more critical. So
it hurts. It hurts to give it that because people worked hard on it. It's a good game as far as games go, as playing a game, but writers, man, they heard it for the developers.
I think so. So is this something that you would recommend to people?
If you like zombies, it's not a waste of time.
But you just gave it a 3.5.
If you like zombies, it's not a waste of time. Well, because it's for story.
Okay.
I would do Days Gone and just play Days Gone.
Days Gone is a better game.
It's much. I'm playing it now.
Controversial take. Anyway, that is going to be it, man. A final verdict, I'm going to say, is somewhere between a 5 and a 5.5 from Why We Game. I don't necessarily lean all the way into the 5 or 5.5, and obviously neither does he. He wants it lower, but that is roughly our average here. It is what it is, man. If you come out with a story game and the story's not great, it's going to impact stuff. Is it worth playing as far as I'm concerned? Yes. I think you should play it. I think it is an experience that you should have. And if you have not played the first one, I would recommend playing the first one because that one is a masterpiece and it is done so well.
Yes.
So play that one first, and then you'll understand kind of how we are feeling as fans who are attempting an unbiased review. That's the best that I got. So yeah, that's our review of The Last of Us 2, man. Definitely a little bit of a letdown. 5.5. So thank you guys so much for clicking on the video. I hope you guys are enjoying the skits. We work really hard, and and it's difficult to convince Drake to put on all the different outfits that we have.
He never wears anything. It's always me. Put on a jacket. Put on the wig.
Yeah, we have
I'll watch.
my whole closet full of things for you to wear. So you guys make sure to drop us a like and subscribe if you're interested in this content. Please be on the lookout for weekly news. We're doing weekly gamer news that is coming up very soon. I was going to say soon, but then kind of said shortly. So we're doing soon. It's coming up very soon. Pay attention to that. If you guys disagree with us, maybe you agree with us, leave your comments down in the comment section. Let's have a conversation. If you want to see Why We Game stream live, all the games that we're reviewing, make sure to click the link down below for my Twitch channel. It is, right now we're operating through my channel because we don't have a Why We Game channel, but it is twitch.tv/its_PTV, man. Go follow that one and make sure you turn the notification bell on. Thank you guys so much for clicking on it, and we will see you guys in the next one, man. Peace.
Today!
Quiet on set, please. You know what? People really love The Last of Us. They love the characters, the story. It did really well. The numbers.
Big Chungus!
All right, that's it. Great teeth. I work on my teeth.